In the vast emptiness of space, senior researcher Li Hyun sat at his station, his fingers moving swiftly across the holographic controls of the quantum array. The peaceful world of Eulora spread out below the orbital facility, its twin moons casting gentle shadows across the planet's purple oceans. Li Hyun took pride in his work. The Eulorans had built their civilization on the pursuit of knowledge, turning their homeworld into a haven of scientific discovery. Their cities were marvels of architecture, seamlessly blending with the natural environment. Research centers dotted the landscape, their crystal spires reaching toward the stars. As he adjusted the sensitivity of the long-range sensors, Li Hyun hummed an old tune. The quantum array was their window to the cosmos, designed to detect and analyze phenomena across light years of space. His team had spent years perfecting the technology, making it possible to observe distant stars with unprecedented clarity. The first warning came as a subtle change in the background radiation. Li Hyun might have missed it if he hadn't been running a routine calibration. The signal pattern was unlike anything in their database, a crystalline structure that seemed to bend space itself. His hands trembled as he enhanced the reading. The signature was massive, approaching from the outer reaches of their star system. As the data streamed in, his worst fears were confirmed. The crystallids had returned. The alert system activated automatically, bathing the control room in red light. Other researchers rushed to their stations, their faces pale with worry. They had all heard stories of the crystallids, silicon-based entities that traveled through space like a plague, consuming everything in their path. "Send word to the Science Council," Li Hyun ordered, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Priority 1 alert. This is not a drill." The crystallids had attacked once before, decades ago. They had barely driven them back then, and the cost had been devastating. 3 research outposts lost, thousands of lives ended. The Eulorans had hoped they would never return. Kim Dae arrived at the facility within the hour, his usually neat appearance showing signs of haste. As head of the Euloran Science Council, he carried the weight of their civilization's safety on his shoulders. The council members gathered in the emergency chamber, their faces illuminated by the holographic display of the approaching threat. "Show me the data, Li Hyun," Kim Dae requested, his eyes fixed on the swirling patterns of energy that marked the crystallids' advance. Li Hyun projected the sensor readings. "They've already breached the outer defense perimeter. The automated warning beacons are going dark one by one. Their numbers are far greater than last time." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Eulorans had spent years improving their defensive capabilities, but their shields were designed to protect against natural phenomena and space debris. They had never focused on weapons or war technology, believing that knowledge and peaceful exploration would protect them. "How long?" one council member asked, her voice barely a whisper. "At their current speed, they will reach our orbital stations in 14 days, Li Hyun replied. "The main planet within 20. Kim Dae stood, his decision made. "Our shields cannot withstand another assault. We must seek help." He turned to the assembly. "We are not alone in this galaxy. There must be others out there, species who have faced similar threats and survived." The council erupted in discussion. Never before had the Eulorans reached out to another civilization. Their transmissions had always been passive, observing but never engaging. "The quantum array," Li Hyun suggested. "We can modify it to send a focused distress signal. With enough power, we could reach across thousands of light years." Kim Dae nodded. "Begin the modifications. We will include all our data on the crystallids. If anyone responds, they need to know what they're facing." For 3 days and nights, Li Hyun and his team worked tirelessly. They rerouted power from non-essential systems, strengthened the quantum transmitters, and composed a message that would translate across any language barrier. The signal would carry technical specifications, cultural information, and a plea for assistance. As the final preparations were made, Li Hyun stood at his station one last time. The crystallids were closer now, their advance visible even to the naked eye. a glittering wave of destruction moving through space. "Signal ready," he announced, broadcasting on all quantum frequencies. Kim Dai placed his hand on Li Hyun's shoulder. "Now we wait and hope someone is listening." The message burst forth from Eulora, riding waves of quantum energy across the cosmos. As it traveled outward, carrying the hopes of an entire civilization, none of them could have known that on a distant blue world called Earth, someone was about to answer their call. Admiral Park Jin stood at the window of the United Earth Defense Command Station, watching the Earth slowly rotate below. The space station's position gave him a perfect view of humanity's homeworld, its continents wrapped in swirling white clouds. The sight usually brought him peace, but today his mind was troubled by the message they had received. The quantum transmission had arrived 12 hours ago, detected by Earth's deep space monitoring arrays. The signal was unlike anything their scientists had seen before, a complex pattern of information encoded in ways that spoke of advanced technology far beyond Earth's current capabilities. "Admiral," his assistant called from the doorway. "The analysis team is ready." Park Jin turned away from the window and walked to the main command center. The room was filled with Earth's brightest minds, military strategists, scientists, and government representatives from every major nation. They gathered around a large holographic display showing the decoded alien message. Dr. Li Min, head of Sena Communications, stood to present their findings. "The message comes from a species called the Eulorans. Their civilization is approximately 2,000 light-years from Earth in what we call the Carina arm of our galaxy." The hologram shifted to show images of the Euloran world, a beautiful planet with purple oceans and elegant spires reaching into the sky. But what caught Park Jin's attention were the readings of the approaching threat. "The crystallids, as they call them, are unlike any life form we've encountered in our explorations," Dr. Li continued. "They're silicon-based entities that operate as a collective consciousness. Their purpose appears to be consumption and expansion, with no interest in communication or coexistence." Colonel Kim Woo, the military analyst, stepped forward. "Based on the tactical data provided, these crystallids show no conventional weaknesses. They don't need air, food, or rest. They learn from each encounter and adapt their strategies accordingly." Park Jin studied the projected path of the crystallid advance. "How much time do the Eulorans have?" "At current speeds, less than 20 days before their outer defenses fall completely," Kim Woo replied. "Their technology is impressive, but it's all focused on research and exploration. They have no real weapons, no military experience." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. Their ships were new, their crews still learning to navigate the complexities of interstellar space. But they had something the Eulorans lacked: centuries of military experience and a hard-won knowledge of warfare. "Can our ships reach them in time?" Park Jin asked. The chief engineer, Song Tae, consulted his datapad. "If we push our engines to maximum and use the new quantum slip technology, we could arrive in 16 days. But it would mean deploying almost our entire fleet. Earth would be vulnerable." Park Jin walked to the center of the room, his decision already forming. "Look at what they've sent us," he gestured to the hologram. "Their entire scientific database, freely shared. Cultural information, star charts, technological specifications, everything they know, offered without hesitation to complete strangers in their moment of need." He turned to face the assembly. "We have the ability to help. And more importantly, we have the responsibility. Humanity has fought its way to the stars. We've overcome our divisions, united our planet, and reached out into space. What does that achievement mean if we turn our backs on the first civilization to ask for our aid?" The council members exchanged glances. General Park Soo raised her hand. "The Euloran technology could advance our own capabilities by decades. An alliance with them would be valuable." "That's not why we should help them," Park Jin countered. "We should help because it's right. Because somewhere out there, A peaceful civilization is facing extinction, and they've placed their trust in whoever might be listening. The debate lasted 3 days. Every aspect was considered: the risks, the costs, the potential consequences of intervention. Earth's governments argued and deliberated, weighing the fate of an alien species against their own security. In the end, it came down to a vote. Park Jin stood before the World Council as the results were tallied. Nation by nation, humanity made its choice. "The vote is concluded," the Council President announced. "By a majority of 87%, Earth has chosen to render aid to the Yularen people." Park Jin felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Orders were immediately sent to every military base and shipyard. The fleet would deploy within hours, carrying humanity's best ships and bravest crews to answer the call for help. As he watched the preparations begin, Park Jin thought about the message that had traveled across 2,000 light-years of space. Soon, the Yulorans would know they were not alone. Help was coming, bringing with it humanity's determination, courage, and hope for a future where different species could stand together against the darkness between the stars. The stars blurred and twisted as the Earth Defense Fleet emerged from hyperspace. Leading the formation, the flagship Terra-Dawn cut through space, its engines pulsing with blue energy. Captain Lee Sun stood on the bridge, her heart racing as the alien world of Eulora came into view. The planet was more beautiful than the transmissions had shown. Purple oceans stretched beneath swirling white clouds, while the landmasses shimmered with cities that seemed to grow from the Earth itself. But the sight that caught everyone's attention was the glittering threat at the edge of the system: the advancing crystallid force. "All ships report successful transit," announced the communications officer. "Fleet is in defensive formation." Lee Sun nodded, straightening her uniform. "Send our greeting message on the frequencies they provided. Let them know Earth has answered their call." The response came almost instantly. A voice filled with hope and disbelief echoed through the bridge. "Earth vessels, this is Yuloran Control. We didn't expect anyone to come so quickly." The human fleet moved into orbit around Eulora, their arrival causing a stir among the local population. Through the view screens, Lee Sun could see crowds gathering in the cities below, looking up at the stars where Earth's ships now held position. The diplomatic team assembled in the ship's transport room. Lee Sun checked her translator one final time before stepping onto the teleport pad. The Yulorans had shared their transport technology in their distress message, allowing for safe passage between ship and surface. In a flash of light, they materialized in a grand hall. The architecture was unlike anything on Earth, flowing lines of crystal and metal that seemed to defy gravity. But it was their hosts that took their breath away. The Yulorans stood slightly taller than humans, their skin shimmering with subtle colors that shifted like the surface of a soap bubble. Their large, expressive eyes showed intelligence and curiosity. They moved with a grace that made them appear to float rather than walk. Kim Da, head of the Yuloran Science Council, stepped forward to greet them. His skin rippled with patterns that the translators indicated showed surprise and gratitude. "Welcome to Eulora, people of Earth. I must admit, when we sent our message into the void, we feared no one would answer." Lee Sun bowed slightly, a gesture the Yulorans returned. "Earth received your call, and we came to help. We bring ships, soldiers, and our experience in dealing with threats to our existence." The meeting moved to a circular chamber where both delegations could sit comfortably. Through the crystal walls, they could see the city stretching out below, its spires reaching toward the sky. Yuloran scientists eagerly shared their data, while human military advisors presented their initial defensive strategies. "Your people responded without knowing us," Kim Da said during a quiet moment. "We've never encountered a species willing to risk their lives for strangers. Most civilizations we've observed from afar seem focused only on their own concerns." Lee Sun smiled. "Humanity has learned through hard experience that standing together is better than standing alone. We've had our share of conflicts, but they taught us the value of helping others." The cultural exchange continued throughout the day. The Eulorans showed them their research facilities, each more impressive than the last. Their technology focused on understanding the universe, creating rather than destroying. Their medical knowledge was centuries ahead of Earth's, but they had never developed weapons more powerful than defensive shields. "We always believed that knowledge would protect us," a Euloran scientist explained, showing them a quantum computation center. "That if we understood everything about our universe, we would never need to fight." As night fell on Eulora, Lee Sun stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The crystallids were visible now, a faint glitter in the darkening sky. They had less than 2 weeks before the enemy reached striking distance. Kim Da joined her, his skin glowing softly in the twilight. "Your ships are impressive, but the crystallids are unlike anything you've faced before. Are you certain your people are ready for this?" Lee Sun watched as Earth fighters practiced maneuvers above the city, their engines drawing patterns against the stars. "We're here because every species deserves the chance to pursue their dreams in peace. Your people chose to reach for the stars with open hands instead of closed fists. Earth will help you keep that choice." As they discussed plans for the coming days, neither leader could know that their meeting would mark the beginning of more than just a military alliance. The day Earth answered Eulora's call would be remembered as the moment two very different civilizations discovered they could be stronger together than apart. Commander Kang Ho leaned forward in his chair, his eyes fixed on the holographic display floating in the center of the Euloran research facility. The three-dimensional images showed recordings of previous crystallid attacks, their movements eerily beautiful despite their destructive nature. The room around him was filled with both human and Euloran analysts, all working to understand their common enemy. Screens covered the walls, each displaying different aspects of the crystallid threat, their structure, movement patterns, and energy signatures. "Play that sequence again," Kang Ho requested, pointing to a particular moment when the crystallids had breached a defensive line. The hologram rewound, showing the crystalline entities flowing like liquid metal before reforming into solid shapes. Lee Hyun, the Euloran senior researcher, adjusted the playback speed. "This was recorded during their first attack on our outer colonies. We lost 3 research stations before we managed to drive them back." Kang Ho watched intently as the scene unfolded. The crystallids moved with a purpose that suggested intelligence, yet there was something mechanical about their coordination. "They're not just attacking," he muttered. "They're sampling, testing defenses, learning responses." The commander stood and walked through the hologram, studying the crystallids from different angles. His military training helped him see patterns that the peace-loving Eulorans had missed. Each attack had a purpose, each retreat a reason. "Show me their energy readings during the transformation phases," he requested. The display shifted, overlaying complex data patterns across the image. Something caught his eye: a slight fluctuation in the crystallid structure just before they changed form. A young Euloran scientist named Min Su approached with additional data. "We've analyzed their composition. The entities are silicon-based, but their molecular structure is unlike anything we've encountered. They can alter their crystalline matrix at will." Kang Ho nodded, pieces of the puzzle starting to fall into place. "They operate as a hive mind, don't they? Each individual crystal is part of a larger consciousness." "Correct," Lee Hyun confirmed. "When they consume resources, they convert matter directly into more of themselves. Each new crystal becomes part of their collective awareness." The commander pulled up Earth's weapon specifications on a nearby screen. "Have you ever tried sonic weapons against them? Anything that might disrupt their crystalline structure?" The Eulorans exchanged glances. "We never developed weapons," Min Su explained. "Our defensive systems were designed to deflect natural threats. Asteroids, solar flares, space debris." "But you understand resonance frequencies," Kang Ho pressed. "Your quantum communication technology is based on harmonic vibrations, isn't it?" Lee Hyun's eyes widened as he grasped the implication. "Yes, we could modify our transmission arrays to generate focused sonic pulses, if we find the right frequency." The next hours were a flurry of activity. Human military engineers worked alongside Euloran scientists, combining their knowledge in ways neither species had considered before. They ran simulations, analyzed crystal samples, and tested different frequency combinations. Kang Ho stood back, watching the collaboration with satisfaction. Where humans saw weapons, the Eulorans saw harmonics. Where the aliens understood quantum states, Earth's military experience suggested ways to weaponize that knowledge. "Look at this," Min Su called out suddenly. She had been testing a particularly complex frequency pattern against a small crystallid sample. The crystal was vibrating, its structure showing signs of stress. Everyone gathered around the test chamber. The sample's perfect surface was developing tiny cracks, its molecular bonds weakening under the sonic assault. More importantly, the energy readings suggested the effect would cascade through connected crystals. "Your people's scientific knowledge combined with our tactical experience might be the key," Kang Ho explained to the assembled researchers. "We don't need to destroy them completely. We just need to disrupt their hive-mind connection." Li Hyun was already calculating power requirements. "We could modify our planetary defense grid to generate these frequencies on a massive scale. If we coordinate with your ships, we could create a barrier they can't cross without risking their collective consciousness," Kang Ho finished. "Force them to choose between retreat and fragmentation." The excitement in the room was palpable. For the first time since the crystallids appeared, they had found a real weakness to exploit. Humans and Eulorans working together had discovered something neither species would have found alone. As the teams began preparing for large-scale tests, Kang Ho studied the approaching enemy through the facility's windows. The crystallids were visible now, a glittering cloud that grew larger each day. But they were no longer just a mindless force of destruction. They were an enemy that could be fought, could be beaten. "We'll be ready for them this time," he promised, watching human and Euloran scientists working side by side. Together, they would turn the Eulorans' profound understanding of the universe into a shield for their civilization, and humanity's hard-earned combat experience into a sword against the darkness. Dr. Song Mai wiped sweat from her forehead as she adjusted the quantum resonance field. Around her, the Euloran Defense Center hummed with activity. Engineers from both species worked at a frantic pace, their voices mixing in a blend of Earth languages and the musical tones of Euloran speech. The massive chamber housed the planet's main shield generator, its crystal core pulsing with purple energy. Earth's technology looked almost primitive next to the elegant Euloran designs, but Song Mai knew appearances could be deceiving. What humans lacked in refinement, they made up for in practical experience. "Try the frequency modulation now," she called to her Euloran counterpart. The alien scientist adjusted several controls, and the crystal core's pulse changed rhythm. Energy readings spiked on the monitors, then stabilized at a higher level. "Success!" the Euloran exclaimed, his skin flickering with patterns of joy. "The shield harmonics are accepting the new modifications." Song Mai checked the readings carefully. They were integrating Earth's sonic weapon designs into Eulora's planetary defense system. The work was delicate. One wrong calculation could overload the entire network. Through the center's vast windows, she could see more activity in the city below. Human military instructors were training groups of Euloran volunteers in combat basics. The peaceful aliens were learning to defend themselves for the first time in their history. Li Hyun entered the control room, carrying fresh data from the orbital sensors. "The crystallids have slowed their advance," he reported. "They seem to be gathering their forces for a concentrated push. That gives us more time to prepare." Song Min nodded, not looking up from her calculations. The defense modifications were only part of their preparation. Earth ships were positioning themselves around Eulora, their weapons already modified with the new sonic technology. In the training grounds below, a group of Eulorans was learning to operate Earth-designed combat suits. The suits looked odd on their tall, graceful forms, but they would provide crucial protection in battle. A human instructor was demonstrating defensive stances, his movements precise and controlled. "Your species adapts so quickly to new challenges. Li Hyun remarked, watching the training session. We've spent generations pursuing pure knowledge, never imagining we would need to fight. Song Mi paused in her work, considering his words. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come from necessity. Look at what we've accomplished together in just days. She gestured to the modified shield generator. The combined technology was more powerful than anything either species had created alone. Euleran quantum physics enhanced Earth's weapon designs, while human tactical systems gave purpose to Euleran defensive theories. A alert sounded from one of the monitoring stations. Everyone tensed, but it was just another test signal. The entire planet was on edge, preparing for the inevitable battle. Run a full diagnostic on the new shield configurations, Song Mi ordered. Teams of engineers moved to their stations, human and Euleran, working in perfect sync. They had developed their own hybrid language, mixing technical terms from both worlds. Outside, the training continued. The Euleran volunteers were improving quickly, their natural grace making them excellent students once they understood the principles of combat. They would never be warriors, but they could learn to protect themselves. Li Hyun's skin rippled with concern as he studied the latest sensor data. The crystallid force is larger than our initial estimates. Their consumption of the outer colonies has increased their numbers significantly. Song Mi placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, a human gesture the Eulorans had come to understand. Numbers aren't everything. We have something they don't. Two species working as one, combining our strengths. More Earth ships arrived in orbit, taking up defensive positions. The fleet was almost complete now, representing the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Each ship carried modified weapons and enhanced shields, products of the joint human-Euleran cooperation. As night fell over the city, work continued under the light of Eulora's twin moons. Song Mi and Li Hyun coordinated the final calibrations of the planetary defense system. The shield's energy field was visible now, a subtle shimmer in the air that promised protection. Do you think we'll survive this? Li Hyun asked quietly, his normal scientific confidence wavering. Song Mi looked up at the stars, where Earth's ships stood guard alongside Euleran stations. We'll do more than survive, she answered. We'll show the crystallids that different species working together are stronger than any single force. The preparations continued through the night. Two civilizations, one born of peace and one tempered by conflict, readied themselves for the battle ahead. Their combined knowledge and determination would be tested against an enemy that had never known defeat, but they faced that challenge together, united in purpose and resolve. The first wave of crystallids struck at dawn. The alien entities swept toward Eulora like a tide of living crystal, their surfaces reflecting starlight in dazzling patterns. But this time, they found no easy prey. Admiral Park Jin stood on the bridge of the Terra Dawn, his voice steady as he gave orders. All ships, maintain formation. Wait for them to enter the primary engagement zone. The combined fleet hung in space around Eulora, Earth's warships alongside elegant Euleran vessels. They had trained for this moment, rehearsing their coordinated defense until every crew member knew their role perfectly. Crystallid force entering range in 30 seconds, called out the sensor officer. They're moving in their standard attack pattern. Park Jin allowed himself a small smile. The enemy's predictable approach would be their undoing. Signal all ships. Prepare to execute Defense Plan Alpha. The crystallids surged forward, their front lines splitting into smaller groups as they had done in previous attacks. But as they entered the designated zone, Park Jin gave the command they had been waiting for. All ships, activate sonic disruptors. The space around Eulora came alive with invisible energy. Earth ships fired their modified weapons, sending precisely tuned sonic pulses through space. At the same time, Euleran vessels projected quantum fields that amplified the effect. On the planet's surface, Commander Kang Ho directed ground operations from the Central Defense Facility. Status report from all sectors, he ordered, watching as the battle unfolded on massive display screens. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Where the sonic waves struck, The crystallids began to vibrate. Their perfect crystalline structure showed signs of stress, cracks appearing across their surfaces. More importantly, their coordinated movement began to falter. "They're losing their hive-mind connection," reported a Euloran scientist. "The sonic interference is disrupting their ability to communicate." Park Jin watched from orbit as the enemy force began to fragment. Individual crystallids broke formation, their movements becoming erratic. Some tried to retreat, while others pressed forward blindly. "Second wave incoming," warned the sensor officer. "They're attempting to adapt their structure. Modify sonic frequencies according to Plan Beta," Park Jin commanded. The fleet adjusted their weapons, changing the disruption pattern just as they had practiced. The crystallids had evolved to resist many forms of attack, but they had never faced an enemy who could adapt as quickly as they could. On the ground, Kang Ho coordinated the surface defenders. Human soldiers fought alongside Euloran volunteers, protecting key infrastructure. When fragments of the crystallid force broke through the orbital defense, they met prepared resistance. "Shield generators holding at 80%, reported Li Hyun from his station. "The modified resonance fields are working exactly as designed." The battle raged for hours. The crystallids launched wave after wave of attacks, each one meeting the same coordinated defense. Every time they adapted their strategy, the combined human-Euloran force adjusted their response. "They're retreating." The cry came from multiple stations at once. In space, the remaining crystallids were pulling back, their once perfect formation now in chaos. The sonic weapons had done more than damage their physical structure. They had shattered the unity that made the hive mind so formidable. Park Jin maintained his calm demeanor, but satisfaction showed in his eyes. "All ships, maintain pressure. Don't let them regroup." The retreat became a rout. Without their hive mind coordination, the crystallids could not mount an effective defense. Some tried to stand and fight as individuals, but they were quickly overwhelmed by the combined fleet's firepower. On the surface, Kang Ho watched the final phases of the battle with pride. Human and Euloran defenders cheered together as the last crystallid forces were driven from their world. The combined knowledge of both species had turned an unstoppable enemy into a defeated foe. Sensor suites confirmed no crystallid presence within the Euloran system, reported the flagship's science officer. "They're gone." Park Jin finally allowed himself to relax slightly. "Send word to Earth. The defense of Eulora was successful. And signal all ships, well done." As celebrations began on the surface and in orbit, no one could miss the significance of what they had achieved. Two vastly different civilizations had joined forces, combining peace and war, knowledge and experience, to create something new. Together, they had proven that the greatest strength lies not in power alone, but in the ability to unite against common threats. The stars shone down on Eulora, watching as humans and Eulorans celebrated their shared victory. The planet was safe, and more importantly, a bond had been forged that would change both species forever. Starlight sparkled off the debris of battle as the last crystallid ships vanished into deep space. In their wake, they left a changed solar system, not just in the scars of combat, but in the hearts and minds of two civilizations that had found each other in their hour of need. The first cheers started in the smaller ships, then spread across the combined fleet like a wave. Human voices joined with the musical tones of Euloran's celebration. On the bridge of the Terra Dawn, Admiral Park Jin allowed his crew their moment of joy. They had earned it. In the orbital stations, human engineers worked alongside Euloran scientists, repairing damaged systems and sharing stories of the battle. Their languages had begun to blend, technical terms mixing with casual conversation as barriers between species fell away. Li Hyun stood in the main observation deck of Eulora's primary space station, watching the Earth ships move through their patrol patterns. Just weeks ago, his people had been alone in the universe, sending a desperate call into the void. Now, the sight of human vessels among Euloran craft seemed perfectly natural. Kim Da, still wearing the simple robes of the Science Council, gathered the leaders of both species in the Grand Assembly Hall. The room, with its soaring crystal arches, had been quickly repaired after the battle. Humans and Ulorans sat together, no longer separated by protocol or suspicion. "When we sent our message into space," Kim Da began, his skin shimmering with patterns of joy and gratitude, "we could not have imagined the response it would bring. Not just aid in our time of need, but a friendship that will change both our peoples forever." Admiral Park Jin stepped forward to stand beside him. "Earth has long wondered if we were alone in the universe. Now we know not only that we have neighbors among the stars, but that we can stand together against any threat." The assembly erupted in applause. On screens throughout the Uloran system, similar celebrations were taking place. Cities that had prepared for destruction now prepared for a future brighter than anyone had imagined. In the research centers, human scientists marveled at Uloran technology while sharing their own knowledge. The combined fleet had proved that their different approaches could work in harmony. Uloran precision with human adaptability, alien wisdom with Earth's determination. Li Hun found Dr. Song Mai in one of the laboratories, where she was helping to integrate Earth's defense systems with Uloran infrastructure. "I never thought I would see our people working together like this," he said, watching teams move efficiently through their tasks. "The best discoveries often come when we least expect them," she replied with a smile. "Your people reached out, and humanity answered. Now look at what we've built together." Plans were already being made. Earth ships would remain to help rebuild damaged colonies. Permanent diplomatic missions would be established on both worlds. Trade routes would be charted, cultural exchanges arranged, and joint research projects launched. Kim Dae raised his hands for attention as he made the formal announcement. "The Science Council has voted unanimously to establish the first permanent Earth embassy on Ulora. In return, our representatives will travel to Earth, sharing knowledge and building bridges between our worlds." The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Humans and Ulorans alike recognized the historic significance of the moment. Two species, born light years apart, had found each other and discovered they were stronger together than alone. As the celebrations continued into the night, Li Hyun walked through the crowded halls of the station. Everywhere he looked, he saw the future taking shape. Human children were already learning the musical tones of Uloran speech, while young Ulorans practiced Earth gestures and customs. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come not from research, he mused to himself, but from reaching out to others in times of need. The stars wheeled slowly overhead, watching as two civilizations began their journey together. The crystallites had meant to destroy them, but instead had forged a bond that would reshape the galaxy. As Earth ships prepared for their first official diplomatic mission to Ulora, everyone knew that this was just the beginning. For in the vast darkness between the stars, two species had discovered a profound truth, that friendship and unity could overcome any obstacle, and that the greatest adventures begin with a simple call for help.